Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Showcase Shop Talk. Today, we will be discussing cybersecurity as a core competency in higher education. So I am here as one of your hosts for the day. My name is Sophie White, and I manage the Showcase program at EDUCAUSE.
And I'm Jenay Robert. I'm a senior researcher here at EDUCAUSE.
Great. And we are very thankful to have two fantastic guests with us today in our studio. So today we have Jay James, who is Cybersecurity Operations Lead at Auburn University, and John Virden, Assistant Vice President for Security, Compliance, and Risk Management, and Chief Information Security Officer at Miami University, which is located in Ohio, in case you didn't know and thought it might be in Florida. So thank you both for joining us today. We're really excited for this conversation.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Great to be here.
John, your title is a little bit of a mouthful. There are a lot of words in there. So what do you do all day, and how do you balance all of those various different things that you're in charge of?
Absolutely. Well, I just go around telling people what my title is, and that seems to take up most of the day. Now I'm one of the three assistant vice presidents that works for our chief information officer, who's our vice president for information technology at Miami University of Ohio, as you stated. Yet we are, I'm proud to say, we are the oldest university with the word Miami in the title. We were founded in 1809, been around over 200 years, and very proud of that. Now the only word missing from the AVP title is data. I'm the assistant vice president for data security, data compliance, and data risk management. So I have that focus on my mind, mostly working about the enterprise level security of all our information and our systems and our folks out there. But I'm also the chief information security officer. So in that respect, I have a team of folks, information security analysts. We have network security engineers. We have identity and access management that keeps me busy every day. We do all the things that a normal information security office would do, ranging from protecting, putting plans and programs in place to protect our data, our systems, as well as standing by to respond if something's detected, so we can respond appropriately and mitigate, remediate, recover. We need to get back into operations. So that seems to take up a lot of my time. I think I spend a lot of time building relationships and a network. That's really a key part of this job. I think the job of any chief information security officer is getting to know the folks across the university, across the colleges, across the divisions, so you can understand what they're going through, the important data that they care about, their business objectives, the business processes that we need to make sure they can continue to do day in and day out. And so I do spend a lot of time trying to connect with folks all across the campus, in every office, every building, and every campus that we have.
Yeah, we've done a handful of these conversations now related to the showcase topics. So these are the topics that we've highlighted to dive into at EDUCAUSE through the series. They're related to the EDUCAUSE Top 10. But so much of it always comes back to relationships at the institution, how important that is to everything from cybersecurity to data governance to ERP implementations, all these things we're working on in technology. So that's a helpful overview. Thank you. Jay, I know you work a lot with different folks on campus too, including students, which I think is really great, as higher ed, and our mission is to serve the students. So I'm curious if you have anything to add to this idea of relationship building and kind of what your role looks like.
Definitely. And as far as relationship building in my role, it comes up a lot in two areas. So from a security operations area where we're focused in on a lot of our SOC work, Well, incident response is everyone's responsibility. So we have to have a good relationship with all of the departments around campus because we work in a very distributed way. So we have to have a good relationship with the different IT teams at each of the departments, but also have good relationships with the faculty and staff. So one, they know who we are before the bad thing happens. So we already have that relationship there when an incident happens. But also, too, they know what best practices they should follow in terms of reporting an incident, for example, when it happens. So we know what's going on. Because one of the biggest struggles that we face is, this is a big campus with a lot of people and a lot of moving parts. We need everyone to play their role to report things when they happen so we know what's going on. So there's a lot of relationship building there. And the other half of that is we work a lot with security awareness and training, especially expanding in that student space like you brought up. So we go speak at different classes, we go speak to different organizations, whether it's in the College of Engineering or in the College of Business. And we really try to meet people where they are so they understand why security should be important for them, but really tying everything back to the bigger picture to say, hey, your account and your identity is important, and this is how it's important for you, but also in terms of the bigger picture for the university.
That's great. One of the resources we're featuring in this showcase is the Cybersecurity Incident Management and Response Guide. So that was a really great resource created by an EDUCAUSE working group. And something that I took away as someone who doesn't work in cybersecurity day to day, but I'm talking to folks like you all about kind of the strategy and the big issues at institutions, was how much prep work goes into it ahead of time. So how much isn't actually related to once an incident occurs, but how much is setting that groundwork for when there is an incident, what are you supposed to do about it? Here are the different protocols and contacts to reach. So I think that's really important. And then the work that you all are doing with students is awesome. I'm curious, Jenay, feel free to jump in if you have any thoughts, but I'm curious how students are responding to this type of security awareness work that you're doing. Thinking back to my time in an institution, I wasn't always as aware of cybersecurity protocols and needs as maybe I should have been. So I'm curious, does the time-tested pizza and t-shirts approach still work, or do you have a better way that you work with students to get them to care about cybersecurity and understand why it's important?
I just want to say that I love this topic because, especially from research that's come out of EDUCAUSE in the last couple of years, we definitely hear from students that they have no idea what's going on. So we've asked students about like what data they think their institution collects about them, for example, and you get everything from my institution doesn't collect any data about me to I think my institution knows everything about me and sells it to like marketing geniuses out in the, some sort of nefarious plan. So I'm always struck by sort of that range around student awareness and even the extent to which they sort of care about these issues. Sometimes I think sometimes our students are a little numb to like the data rich environment that we're in, and it's just like click agree to everything that comes across their desk. So this is definitely one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, thinking about that and how we approach different types of students. So when we go speak to the Ethical Hacking Club, that's completely different than women in business, for example, that we have a good relationship that we interact with. And when we do present to them and have those conversations, especially in the College of Business, we tell them the importance of cybersecurity now, as a student, but also those practices are going to carry over when you get into the workforce and how valuable those skills will be. So when you see phishing in the environment now, or when you notice something weird is going on with some platform that you're using, you might see similar types of things when you get into the workforce there. So that resonates well, especially when we talk to groups like Women in Business. And obviously, when we talk to the College of Engineering, they like knowing the nuts and bolts of things and, the who, what, when, where, how type situations. But t-shirts definitely are great. We saw that coffee mugs work really good too. But it's really trying to figure out what works best for the students. And we also make sure that when we do plan those interactions with students, we include them in the process. So when we're planning for Cybersecurity Awareness Month, for example, we have a committee that we have students involved where we put some ideas their way to say, hey, is this a good idea for students? Or is this the right type of giveaway? Or here's the training. What do you think about it? Do you think this will resonate well? And sometimes they say, yeah, this will work great. And sometimes they're like, maybe you need to switch it up a little bit.
Jay, I think that's really great. I think I really like that you mentioned the College of Engineering and the School of Business, because that's two of the schools that we do some teaching at, some part-time teaching. We have a couple of our information security analysts teach courses in the engineering class. They teach the Introduction to Cybersecurity course in that college. We have faculty that ask all of us to come by different classes at the School of Business here and the computer science courses that are offered. So we do see the students from time to time in those. We do have a role in the orientation, in the students' orientation class at Miami University. They have a University 101 course that all freshmen have to go through, all first-time students have to go through. And we get about a half an hour with those folks to kind of introduce them to cybersecurity and to what they should be working about. You know, all the job scans that we continue to see going into their inboxes day in and day out. So that's a big thing. We also have student employees at Miami University in our information security office, and they play a big role in two regards. One is we do anti-phishing simulated testing, like a lot of folks do every quarter. We had all the divisions and colleges every quarter, and they are the ones that write our phishing emails that we send out to try to trick our constituents, our staff, and our faculty to clicking. So they play a role in helping us do that, and we hear all the time how great a job they're doing with those phishing examples. We also have another student that is really great at writing articles, and she builds a lot of our communications and awareness pieces that we publicize, that we send out to all staff, faculty, and students. And the good thing about that is we're infusing the students' perspective into this. So we're kind of giving them some ideas on topics that are important to be aware of, to protect themselves from, and they write it in their own words, and that helps, I think, as well. Another initiative we have is we do not have an annual required cybersecurity training yet for anybody, but we have a program in place to build that. And kind of like Jay does, we're using students to help build that, because I guarantee you I do not speak the language of a student. I've been many decades away from being in that area, in that range of age, and so it's very helpful that they play a role in that. So we're really appreciative of that aspect. I think the engagement, going out and talking to people. We do the annual Cybersecurity Awareness Month as well, giving out things. We do have a quiz that we offer them to. If they can get any of the answers right, then they get a prize. I think one thing we're very, very proud of is we have a good connection with all the other public higher education schools or universities in Ohio. There's 14 of them, like Ohio State, Kent State, Wright State, Ohio University, University of Cincinnati, all those schools across Ohio. We have a very good connection. We do a lot of things together. We actually had a competition this year with Ohio University. We called it Cybermania. And we built an online quiz. I think it was about 5 or 6 questions. It wasn't a lot, but the goal was who can get their most staff, faculty, and students to take that quiz and submit it. And we ended up winning I think we had a couple thousand. Ohio University had under that. The good news is, yeah, we won, and that's great. But the winner is everybody that added. So we had over 3,000 staff, faculty, and students that spent at least some piece of their day reading through 5 or 6 questions, and at least thinking about cybersecurity for a few moments, and maybe learning something along the way. So we're really proud of that. We're going to do that every year with Ohio University, and I think they want to try to win next year.
I love that. I love that take on, competition between schools doesn't have to be a football game or something. It can be something that, I don't want to bash on football, but something that's strategic to the mission of the institution. And congrats for winning. Ohio State is a big institution, so that's impressive.
It was Ohio. It was Ohio.
You're going to get a lot of angry tweets.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought you said Ohio State. That makes sense.
Sophie, you're going to get a lot of angry tweets from football fans now.
Well,
you worked at a big football school.
Well, as someone that is at a big football school, we compete with our rival in everything. So football, every sport, if it's, we have the Beat Bama food drive for, collecting there's everything we could.
Yeah.
So I actually really like that idea and seeing if that's something that we can even implement. And I also really like, John, when you talked about the students and the different type of roles they play as far as student workers, because, when we hired our student worker team a few years ago, around 2019, that was probably one of the best consequential things that we've done because of, one, they just bring a unique skill set to the table. They absorb a lot really quickly, and it's a win-win. They're developing skills that they could put on their resume, and they are helping out the university in a lot of ways where it's a tough place to find a lot of cybersecurity talent.
If I could add on to Jay's comment as well, you're exactly right. I was at the University of California before this. I've been here for 4 years and 3 months now. Before that, I was 3 years in the University of California system out there, and I was always hesitant to bring the students on. And it wasn't until like the last half of my last year there that we hired a student, and I felt so guilty for not doing it sooner. You're exactly right, Jay. And here at Miami, we've done it like right after I got here. We started with students. That was a huge benefit. And they're so helpful in so many ways, not just doing phishing emails and writing articles, but in previous years, they were able to code, help us build a SIM server. And they're just, it's amazing how intelligent and smart these young kids are these days. And it's just amazing what they bring to us. Also, I wanted to share one more thing that's based on something you mentioned, Jay, that the students, I know what it was. So we're in the process of, in the early stages of building a student-run SOC. One of our sister campuses, the University of Cincinnati, has already created and staffed a student-run SOC. They're just south of us about an hour. It's working well. We do not have that. We want that. We don't have a SOC otherwise. That's a security operations center, kind of a group of folks that optimally 24/7 can be available to detect and analyze events and incidents as they occur and respond to them. But we are really excited about trying to put that in place and man that, or make sure that we have that fully supported by students. We want to use freshmen through seniors. We feel that the freshmen can come in and learn how to build the systems. The sophomores can start to lead the freshmen and kind of train the freshmen. The juniors can start to manage the program and do some scheduling. And then the seniors can help us improve the program. So we're really excited about getting that student aspect in place as well. I wanted to mention one more thing on the topic of awareness. If we can stay on this just for one more second. So one thing we've built at my university is something we call the Information Security Team, and that's different than the Information Security Office. The Information Security Office is the information security analysts, network security engineers, folks that are thinking about cybersecurity 24/7 pretty much. The Information Security Team we've built is a group of about 80 some folks. We call them champions of cybersecurity. We meet once a month for an hour. We give updates on our cybersecurity programs, of upcoming things, of all the projects and initiatives we have in place. That takes about 20 minutes or so, and then we have a guest speaker. And we've had guest speakers from law enforcement, like FBI, Secret Service, the Homeland Security CISA group has come by. We have guest speakers from other institutions, other universities, the National Security Agency, and sometimes just our own folks talking about our own departments and our own implementations that we have. But this has been going on. I started it 4 years ago, and we had 9 people. And on the distribution list, we're over 80 people now. Usually about 47-ish show up on average, and that's every month. And these are folks that are out inside and outside of IT. There's faculty, staff, students. There's only a few students, mostly student employees, but it's a wide group that just seem to have an interest, and it's never forced on them. They're invited, and they come and listen in and have interest in cybersecurity. And that's one of the things, like Cybermania, one of the things I'm most proud of is that group of folks that we can talk to every month. And what that does, it maybe plants some seeds in their minds about things to do and things to be cautious about. Like Jay said, we want to make sure they're aware of what they should and shouldn't do. And we also encourage that they take this home as well. We feel if folks are secure at home, they're going to then be secure at work. And that's our end goal, is making sure we're as secure at work as possible. So that's something that has been really helpful in spreading awareness, and also keeping our information security folks on top of their game, because they have to bring updates and the latest news and the latest tips to this meeting every month. Just wanted to make sure that we have a chance to talk about that.
I love that. I know when I was looking at our showcase resources, we have a quick poll feature that Jenay helped work on. And one of the insights that I gathered from it was there was a quote that was something like, employee behavior is the greatest risk to cybersecurity at an institution, that you have folks who have maybe this elevated access to different systems. And if you have threat actors getting in there, that is bad news. So I love this. This cybersecurity is a core competency, and these ways that you're engaging employees, both in the workspace and at home, to make the institution and the individuals safer.
Yep, John, and I wanted to say I really like that idea that you're being inclusive of everyone, because we have a cybersecurity liaisons type program that's similar, but we focus in on IT professionals. But now that's bringing up some ideas of how we can include other parties and have it a more inclusive thing, because we do meet, I think we meet quarterly and then have workshops in between if we have a particular topic. But that's definitely a great idea. And I had a big grin on my face when you brought up a student-led SOC, because that's my baby here at Auburn University. So, and I really like that you are hiring those freshmen and bringing them up, because when I talk to other groups that have student-led SOCs, they try to focus in on juniors and seniors, but I feel like that's a big missed opportunity to bring in freshmen to train and develop them. And also you have them for 4 years instead of just having that turnover between 2 years and have that drop off of knowledge. So I think that you all are going to have a great time running that SOC.
I think you both touched on it a little bit, but for those of us who are a little less initiated in the security world, can someone unpack a little bit more about what a SOC is, besides what keeps my feet warm?
Sure. So I can jump on that. So this is my all day, every day, and the Security Operations Center. So SOCs usually from a person that knows nothing about SOCs, we look at our environment, we see if there is any malicious activity going on, and we respond to it at the 100-foot view. There are different types of SOCs. There are SOCs that do more compliance type activities. There are SOCs that focus in on threats. There's some hybrid SOCs that do a little bit of everything, but it's really about the detection and the response components of an information security program. So this can range from, hey, Sophie, you got a phishing email and you clicked on it and, there's some crazy stuff starting to happen and you report it and we respond to it there. Or we might have some alerts coming through our security tool set where we see certain types of activity and we respond based off of those alerts coming through those tools. So this can be anything from small phishing attacks where someone entered their information to, oh man, there's this ransomware type of activity that we want to respond to. So that's what we do. Some SOCs run 24/7. We do not run 24/7, but we do have a lot of automated and orchestration type activities to help us keep eyes on things after hours as well.
Yeah, like a bat phone that calls you in the middle of the night if something bad happens and you're like, we're not running 24 hours, but I am available.
Yes. So I have my phone with alerts ready for me if things were to, and it never fails. It's always a Friday before a football game where I get that alert and yep, we are ready to go, pull the laptop up and start responding. And, we get a lot of alerts in, and that's where that student ran SOC really helps us because they can focus in on a lot of that tier 1 type of activity. So the reported phishing and things like that. And then tier 2 and tier 3, we can focus on more of the more sophisticated attacks and things that go on in our environment.
Jenay, I'd like to.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I just wanted to add one more bit to Jay's talk. That's the optimum right there. It really is nice to have that security operations center right there. But there's also, for Jenay's awareness, since she asked about it, there's also an external option as well. Some people are going with a third party SOC as a service that they pay for. You pay for another company, another third party vendor to do what Jay just stated, except they don't work directly for you. They get all your data, your logs, and then they monitor and then help respond and detect and all that. So that's another option for some places, some schools, and even institutions that don't have staffing available or don't have access to students to help out with the student as a SOC. So there's other alternatives out there, but they do come at a cost.
Definitely. And I notice many teams do SOC-like activities and capabilities, but they don't necessarily have a SOC. So they might have an analyst or 2 analysts that do a lot of those response functions, but they don't have a full-fledged SOC with a room where they have people sitting in front of screens responding to those alerts.
Sorry to interrupt, Sophie.
Oh, no, that's okay. My question was more just related to, Jay's point about the SOC isn't 24/7. You're automating it at night. I'm curious, working in the security space, like how are you able to kind of disconnect and not be paranoid all the time that some horrible issue is about to happen? Because being in charge of addressing incidents like this sounds like a scary role. And I want to know, as humans, how you deal with that.
That's a great question. I think that my personal opinion, I think there's a healthy amount of paranoia that cybersecurity professionals should have. But also too, the longer that I'm in the industry, the more equipped I am for the bigger picture, and realize that it's a fight that all cybersecurity professionals are fighting together. I know that there's, between EDUCAUSE and Ren Isaac and larger communities that we all work together for, a cause. I know that you know, incidents are going to happen. There's nothing I can do about that. It's just putting myself in the best position to respond to those incidents. So the more preparation that we do on our end, the more comfortable I feel. So if something were to happen on a Thursday night, that there, might have that be that instant, reaction to, oh man, there's an incident, but I feel comfortable and confident enough to manage whatever comes our way because of the preparation that we've put forward.
I'll add to that. I think Jay would probably agree. Tabletop exercises are key in preparing for an incident response and for an incident, and then responding to it in a confident manner. Being ready, that preparation, making sure you have the appropriate incident response plan in place with playbooks and checklists and who to connect with, who to communicate to, who you can reach out to for third-party support and service, forensic services, reach coaching, etc. So that's key, as Jay said, to have that comfort level that you have a practiced or exercised program in place. That is hugely helpful in allowing us to try to get some sleep at night so we can relax after hours. A second component to this is it's our role and Jay's role to make sure that his folks that work for him and my folks that work for me, that we encourage them to not take their work home with them, to work hard while they're at work, to do their 40 hours a week for the government or the state or the university, and then try not to think about it afterwards so they can have that work-life balance. So it's key. It's a key role to push them. And when there is an incident that occurs, it's also an important thing to do to make sure that we don't overtax our folks. We have it set up in our program where you work. If we realize there's something going on and it can go through the night, we break into a couple shifts so that, and we send, if something looks like it's happening, we send half the group home to go start getting some rest so they can come in later that day or later that night or early the next morning, whatever the requirement is. So it's also key on us to make sure our folks aren't sweating the stuff, so that they're not overstressed and they're rested and can enjoy their jobs and enjoy their work. It's also incumbent on our seniors, my boss and Jay's boss as well, I'm sure, to make sure that they make sure we have comfort, that we have our backs are being watched, that we have the support we need, we have the resources that we need to get to that point where we have the training available and the tools available and the procedures and policy and standards available in place so that we can have that comfort.
John, and to add on to that, we've really been leaning in on cross-training because, we need off days. Our staff needs to be able to feel comfortable with taking off without being, the only person that knows how to do a specific component of the incident response process or to do certain activities. And, it's really easy for me as well, leading the SOC when I'm on vacation and I have Teams on my phone and I notice something's happening for me to just, okay, let me pull my laptop up and see how I can help. But really creating that culture where when you're off and try to disconnect as you can. But I noticed that we have to lean in on making sure that we have multiple people that know how to do different things. So someone could feel more comfortable with, disconnecting when they need to disconnect.
Super awesome.
I want to connect this. It is. I want to connect this to something that we talk about a lot in our Horizon research, even though it's not necessarily directly related to cybersecurity, but one of the main parts of my portfolio is our annual Horizon reports. And without fail, pretty much every time the panelists bring up this idea of employee wellness, mental health, I think it's such a great topic to situate in the cybersecurity space because, as Sophie mentioned, you have such serious jobs. The responsibility is so much. It's definitely nothing I would sign up for. If one of my reports is a day late, no one's mad at me. But if someone in cybersecurity doesn't have their eye on something, the university could be at serious risk. So I think that's a really important thread to bring into this conversation. I appreciate you both bringing that up.
I agree. And I was just reading our latest workforce report that our research and insights team did. We're doing a series of different workforce reports on higher ed and technology, and burnout keeps coming up in those too. So I was really thrilled to hear that you all have a way of proactively addressing this so that your employees aren't getting overtaxed. I think it fits in really well too with this. Our EDUCAUSE top 10 theme for this year was institutional resilience. So how can we build all of these foundations so that if a risk, an attack, a pandemic, whatever it is comes up, that we're prepared for it instead of reacting in the moment. So the future's in good hands if you're doing all these innovative things.
Yeah, one of the
I have a little note here to remind myself to. Sorry. I think there's like a delay on me. I'm sorry. Oh, I was just going to say, because John had mentioned tabletop exercises, and I have a little note that's like, make sure you tell them that reminds you of playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's all. I just needed my nerd moment. If there's any other D&D people who are watching or listening, like, I hear you, I see you, we hear tabletop, and we think D&D. That's it.
Well, let me follow up on that, Jenay. So that's a great point. Our very first one, we kicked off our first tabletop during the first start of the pandemic, and it was so about 3 or so years ago. It was our first one, at least the first one since I've been there, probably the first one ever here at Miami. But it was IT only. We'd since done one in the financial area, one of our executive level group, but we started out with one in IT folks only. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of gamers in IT. There's a lot of D&D players. So we brought in one of our IT folks who's the biggest gamer we know, and he's not security. He's not a system admin or anything like that, but he's a big gamer. So we asked him to facilitate our first tabletop exercise, and he brought dice, and he brought stuff. And I'm not a gamer. I can play a few board games and some card games, but not a big gamer by far. My boss certainly is, huge gamer, CIO. But he was bringing all these Dungeons and Dragons gaming aspects to our tabletop exercise to make it fun for the participants. It was still challenging. We still had the outages and the decisions to make, and we would base how bad an outage was based on a dice roll. If it was a 2, it meant one thing. If it was a 7, it meant something else. So he really brought a lot of excitement, had a lot of games, and had some gifts he would give out and things like that. So the gaming aspect was big. It helped make it a big success, and that really just got us started. We didn't use gaming so much with our executive level tabletops and our financial ones, but with the IT folks, it was a big hit.
That should be our next shop talk. We should live stream this D&D version of the tabletop challenges for cybersecurity. That would be amazing.
I love that. I was going to say, when I joined EDUCAUSE and went to my first cybersecurity and privacy professionals conference, I was told game night at the conference is a big deal, and I found that out myself quickly. I feel like it's one of my favorite EDUCAUSE events now every year. Last year I played I think it was like a wizard card game that was kind of like euchre, and it was such a blast. I am excited for that part of the conference this year too. But yeah, work doesn't have to be all serious. I love just the concept that we can learn new things while having fun and playing Dungeons and Dragons too.
Definitely. If there was a Dungeons and Dragons type of tabletop for cybersecurity professionals at annual conference, that would be really fun. I know I would sign up for it.
Let's make it happen. Yep. We'll work with John. We'll make it a thing.
Well,
be part of that, send us an email.
I have there's a gentleman that works with us, Jake Harrison. He's one of our information security analysts. He's our incident response person in charge of all that. And he's the one that builds the tabletops or brings in third parties to do tabletop exercises. He created a program, what he calls the tiny tabletop exercises or the tiny tabletops. And so he does, there's a card game. I forget the title. Jay, you may know. It's like Bad Guys and Borders or something.
So it's like backdoors and breaches.
Backdoors and breaches.
Yeah.
So he reaches out and he will meet with, he has met with various departments. Usually it's an IT section of a different college or division out there. I mean, they're asking for these. They want to have these, and he'll go and they'll play a little, like an hour-long backdoors and breaches game as a tiny tabletop to go through that. And then he tells me he spends most of the time, the majority of the time he spends with them is he's just answering questions. So they're asking him about how things work and how they should do things. So he's learned that in addition to just learning how to respond to an incident with this little game, backdoors and breaches, he's getting so much interest in the world of security based on just being in front of them and being available. He tells them, I'm here. As long as I'm here, I'll answer any questions you have. And they just pummel him with questions, and he loves it. And it's really helping spread knowledge and awareness of cybersecurity around to our different. I think he does them about every other month. And they're small, small group of people, 3, 4, 5, sometimes 7 folks that are asking for this. And it's been a big, big hit as well. So if we did a Dungeons and Dragons tabletop at EDUCAUSE, he would play a big role in that for sure.
All right.
I think it could be an amazing pre-conference workshop, like a half day or a full day of different games that people use to train. So you all heard it here first. We created this idea together. It's probably too late for this year's conference, but 2025.
No, I love that. So I just took our cybersecurity awareness training, the required one, yesterday, and I learned a lot. I will say I think that it scared me a little bit because it's getting more advanced, that I've taken these trainings in the past and it's been, oh, this is obvious. This is a phishing email. This is not a phishing email. And then this time I feel like I got a couple wrong, and I'm starting to see how AI ties into it, how threat actors are getting smarter, all of that. So that is scary. But despite that, it was still kind of boring. So I really like this element of infusing fun where we can.
Let me, if I could add to that, Sophie, you're exactly right. Cybersecurity is easily boring, and the phishing, the phishing tactics are going to get even better, especially with AI. But on the boring part, we mentioned before, we're trying to use or employ students to help us build the training, and especially the training when we get to it. We're not there yet. When we get to the required cybersecurity training for students, we want that to be built by students for students. And we want them to use the medium that means something to them. Getting them to do a CBT test on a computer is probably not the best thing for them. They're used to having their phone in their hand, thumbing through things very quickly, spending just a few moments on a graphic or a meme or a video. So we want to make sure that it fits with them so that they get it, so that not get it by as in understand it, but they get to have the opportunity and they want to see it. And it's something that maybe it takes them 7 seconds or 12 seconds. We all know the basic things we want them to do, right? It's not click and be cautious and don't reply and all those things. So I think I think using our students, getting our students to help us craft these things that are in a language, that's another thing. Get a language that the students get is key. I've been on Yik Yak, which is a social media thing that a lot of higher education students use to communicate. It's anonymous or pseudo-anonymous, actually. but I've looked a time or two at what they say, their language, and it's almost like a foreign language to me, the way they communicate with each other and how they've shortened things and talk about things, abbreviate things. So we are definitely going to focus on that, because you're exactly right, Sophie. If you sat a student down and said, I'm going to talk to you for 20 minutes about cybersecurity, they're not going to be interested at all.
Yep. So, John, you just reminded me of a story of a planning session that we had for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. And, we told the students we want them to come up with the theme. And one of the students said, we want to do something a little vintage, like the 90s. And that just made me feel instantly old as someone that was born in the 90s. So, their perspective, even, me just being 10 years out, there's just a lot of differences between what I would think would be appropriate versus what they would think. And something that the SOC has helped out with is that when we get a lot of alerts in and when we have a lot of incidents that we manage through the SOC, we try to see what the students fall for the most and then try to focus in our training on that versus just giving overarching generic training. So from an awareness perspective, we try to give them, resources for everything, just for whatever they may need, and then target specific types of attacks that they fall for more frequently. I know for us, QR codes have been a big thing lately in terms of QR codes in phishing or, them posting it around. So targeting it towards that and then having the students help us come up with the quote unquote coolest way of presenting that information.
I like that.
That's great. Use of data-driven decisions. Great. I think we're getting to the end of the time that we had allocated for this discussion. So I want to make sure, does anyone have any burning questions or thoughts about cybersecurity as a core competence that we haven't discussed?
I'll start. You're exactly right. It's core. It's getting more core. We're trying to focus. What I like to say, from the inside out. We want to make sure that our information security staff have the training they need, whether it be SANS courses or other certifications or other training availabilities, going to conferences to meet people. I think networking is key. Hearing and learning what other folks are doing. Like with the SOC, with Jay, where, we hope to meet with you at some point at a conference, maybe in person, and share some thoughts on how that works. We're focusing on that. Then we focus a little bit outward on our inter-IT staff to try to build this culture of awareness. My predecessor, I've been here about 4 years, a little over 4 years, and my predecessor did a really great job of burning it into the minds of everybody across our central IT group, that security is important, and they do think about it a lot. We get questions all the time from our system admins, our database administrators, our software developers. And is this secure? Is this not secure? Are we doing this right? Is there a better way? So building that culture within IT is key. And for me, it's just trying to maintain it, because my predecessor did such a great job. And then going out from that, working with the distributed IT folks, like Jay mentioned, the IT leaders at each of the colleges and the divisions, and making sure we keep them involved and informed. Another thing we've learned in the last few years is to make sure we include them in all our project and programs that we have ongoing. Examples are we've implemented CrowdStrike. We're currently implementing a new IAM solution. The CrowdStrike was for our endpoint detection response, a new identity and access management solution. Sophie mentioned the ERP, where we go live on July 1st with a brand new cloud-based ERP, replacing a 20-year-old banner implementation. We're getting a new CRM. What we've learned, here's the key part, is instead of just thinking about these things from within IT, our central IT group, is we always, at all our projects and our core program teams, our work groups, we always bring in folks from outside of central IT. We bring in some IT folks from other colleges and divisions. We bring in non-IT folks so that we get perspective from the user's aspect. And that's been hugely important in successful project and program implementation. Getting that buy-in early, getting that support, making sure they're aware early, that has been hugely important. And then moving out from there, we mentioned the information security team, the champions across the institution, and then making sure our students are as aware as possible. So I wanted to make sure that I wanted to share that we do kind of I don't know if you call it an onion method, but we look at from the inside out. And the second note I'd like to leave us with, from my perspective, is your cybersecurity strategy. We spent a lot of time to build a very, I'll say clear and concise, but a thorough cybersecurity strategy, which addresses policy, procedure, people, and technology. And we look out 7 years, and we've included a review every 2 years to make sure we're looking at modernization of equipment, of technology, new threat landscape challenges that are popping up all the time. So I think those two things, a big awareness program and making sure you have a solid information security strategy in place with the roadmap infused into it. And then we've promoted that. I've taken that to our executive level, our board of trustees. We share it with all the components across the institution, so they're aware of what we're looking at for the future and how important it is that it get implemented, so that we are as secure and safe as possible.
Yep, John, and I really want to just co-sign everything that you said. It's really the same here at Auburn, to where, culture is so important in the cybersecurity space, especially when you think of how higher ed works and how we communicate with each other and how we share information. So the culture of everyone knowing their role in cybersecurity is at the utmost importance. There's a stigma around technology being the just sole focal point of cybersecurity. Like, you got to buy the next best tool to put in place. But you can have the strongest firewall, you can have the strongest endpoint detection and response solution, but if the culture of cybersecurity isn't there, if everyone isn't cyber aware, at least, it's really all for naught. And I've seen it multiple times in different departments when responding to incidents, and most incidents are started by the humans that are inside of your organization. So definitely agree with that. And on the strategy piece, working in the SOC, I realized that sometimes for cybersecurity professionals and in cybersecurity, that it's hard to think strategic because of all of the emerging threats and how tactical you have to be. And John, I think it's really important that, really important point, you have to find time to be strategic, because, there's no catching up to the threats that are out there. There's no, okay, we're done, right? And for even going back to burnout and going back to, keeping your employees engaged and not dealing with fatigue, you have to think of 3 steps out of how are we going to become more automated and orchestrated? How are we going to utilize AI because the adversaries are? How are we going to prepare ourselves for that? So 5 years from now, we're not even in a worse situation when it comes to staffing and preventing burnout and being able to keep up with all of those emerging threats. So I think all of that is very important.
That was a really great summary, I think, to wrap up all the key points from this conversation. So thank you, Jay. I just have one more quick question for the group before we end, which is, do you have a favorite? We talked about Dungeons and Dragons, but do you have a favorite hacker movie or podcast or some kind of media source you like to listen to? I can start. Jay, you mentioned you were a 90s kid, and I also am a 90s kid. So I grew up watching the Italian Job movies with my brothers, and there is a really great hacker in those ones. So that one stood out to me, and for a while I really wanted a Mini Cooper because of those movies too.
I'll add, one of the things that's been most beneficial for me, especially lately, I'll say in the last 3 years, is this thing called the Cybersecurity Headlines. It's a CISO series.com. Every morning at 6 a.m., they put out a little, like 6 or 7 minute podcast thing that talks about the biggest, the top, it could be 6 to 10 stories that have been in the news, in the last 24 hours. And that really helps me start my day. I wake up and I do whatever I do, but I listen to that first before I even leave the house. And so it helps me get a feel for what's been going on. It's always reminding that, the attackers are still there and they're still getting into these big institutions and doing these bad things. There's a few times there's a good story here and there. But that has really been helpful for me. And it also helps me talk to others. Like I said earlier, I try to build a lot of relationships and do a lot of networking, and having those stories in the forefront of my head as I'm going around talking to folks, it helps me share current things that are happening. And often they relate, sometimes, not often, but sometimes they relate to higher education, or they relate to systems or the types of systems that we have here. So it's a really good thing. So that's one of my favorite things. There was a hacking movie with Robert Redford in it. I can't remember the name, but that was one of my favorite movies.
So I'm not sure if I have a movie, but for a podcast, I highly recommend Darknet Diaries. That is one of my favorite podcasts in terms of cybersecurity. It really got me into cybersecurity when it started years ago, and it does a really great job of telling all of these really cool stories in the cybersecurity space, but it also does a good job of explaining terminology and, explaining what really happens for those that might not know a lot of cybersecurity terminology. And the stories are very unique each new episode, so I highly recommend listening to Darknet Diaries.
I'm also a big Darknet Diaries fan. But I was actually thinking about this as others were talking about how spy movies over the years have increasingly been about cybersecurity. Like, I love a good spy movie, but, if you watch something, I was thinking that we recently watched Rabbit Hole is a spy TV series. It's only been out for one season. I don't know if more seasons will come, but it's about like espionage, but really it all revolves around cybersecurity. So that to me is very interesting to see that shift over time. But I'd say just give me a good spy movie.
Oh, that is interesting how I feel like it went from maybe the techie gadgets to more hackers and security things. So, All right. Well, I think this is a great place to wrap up. So thank you so much to Jay and John for sharing your time and insights and doing this really important work for all of us in higher ed. We so appreciate it.